Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Firefighters podcast, where we seek to develop, inspire, and motivate the world of the emergency services operator through a series of wide-ranging conversations. Now, before we go any further, just hit that rate, follow, or subscribe button on whatever platform you're listening to. It's a key performance indicator for us and helps us reach even more people. Now, here's what we've got for you today. What do you know about the big C word? Cancer is one of those words that nobody ever wants to hear. Cancer, in its definitive form, is a complex group of diseases characterized by the uncontrolled growth and spread of abnormal cells in the body. It can occur virtually anywhere in the body and may form solid tumors to affect the blood or lymphatic systems. Understanding the background of cancer involves exploring its causes, development, and the efforts to diagnose and treat it. Now, in the world of firefighting, this has become a much more widely discussed topic because we're seeing a lot more of it, unfortunately. Now, efforts to address firefighter cancer globally have been significant, in fairness. Firefighters are exposed to various carcinogens during firefighting activities, and there has been a growing recognition of the elevated cancer risk in the profession. There's been some really key areas, initiatives, and developments, from ongoing research aiming to identify specific carcinogens and the impact on us as firefighters and first responders. There's lots of awareness campaigns highlighting the increased risk of cancer among firefighters with urgent preventative measures and early detection. We have seen the implementation of stricter safety protocols, including the use of advanced personal protective equipment to minimize exposure to harmful substances. There is many behavioral aspects to it, with the improved cleaning procedures for gear and equipment to reduce contamination risks. And there's been a tremendous amount of advocacy for implementing a legislative change and recognising the support firefighters need in dealing with occupational cancer. Across the world, but especially also in the UK, we have seen regular health checks come in with cancer screenings for firefighters to facilitate early detection and intervention. We are seeing the development and further sharing of comprehensive, enhanced training programs to educate firefighters about the risk of exposure to carcinogens and the importance of preventative measures that we can do, as well as so much of the great stuff around post-incident decontamination procedures to minimize our exposure and the long-term effect that that's going to have on all of us. But today we're going to be talking about what happens when you do hear that word, when someone does sit down with you and hit you with the C-bomb. My guest today is Stephen Burns, aka Robbie Burns. Robbie is a watch manager in the operational assets team in the UK Fire and Rescue Service, and he shares his very personal cancer journey with us today. Robbie followed his childhood dream to become a firefighter and joined the service in 2006, aged 34. 5 years on, in November 2011, he felt he was at the peak of his physical fitness, taking part in marathons and 10-mile hell runs just for fun. But in January 2012, he first noticed blood in his urine. And after a quick Google, he reassured himself that it was due to the distance running, and he ignored that first crucial warning. 2 months later, he again had blood in his urine and approached his GP. The doctor advised him that he had a bladder infection and issued antibiotics. 8 months on, Robbie experienced yet another episode, and upon consulting a different doctor, he was referred the same day to a urology department in Portsmouth Hospital. During the following cystoscopy, one of many Robbie would have to endure, it revealed a huge coral-like growth attached to his bladder wall. He was told he had an aggressive cancer and that there would be a journey ahead. Today we're going to talk about Robbie's journey from then on. He's had over 30 surgeries, he's had nearly 20 sessions of chemotherapy, and he is still battling through this today. Some of the content from today's conversation you may find upsetting. That is, of course, not our desire. It is to give a very honest opportunity for someone who has had to walk this path and share some of those lessons learned. Some people, believe it or not, in the fire and rescue service community still think this is a myth. They think it is a big, scary monster in the closet under the bed, and are yet to be convinced that we are exposing ourselves to a great deal of carcinogenic material. Now, hopefully you don't think that. You may be listening to that going, BS Pete, everyone believes this. Well, hopefully that will soon be the case. Robbie doesn't know how he got the cancer. Robbie doesn't know that it was directly associated with his role as a firefighter, but he knows it's certainly been a contributing factor. So I hope you take a lot away from this. I hope it is emotive for you. I hope it drives you to consider your daily actions, your daily behaviors, and gives you some confidence and assertiveness to address the cavalier attitude to which other people may be subjecting themselves to the very same dangers and unnecessary harm that so many of us, including myself, have done in the past. If we knew better, we would have done better. Now we know better, so it's our chance to do better. Thanks for coming back to the podcast. Be sure to check out the notes for a couple of crucial links that we talk about on today's episode, and please be safe out there. I'll see you on the other side. January 2012. Take me back 12 years. Where was your life at then?
So, in chaos, to be honest with you. So the history behind that was I was fit and well for a lot of years, doing lots of serious running. I was doing particularly stupid hell runs, things like that, across mountainous regions. Anyway, in the January, it came to the...
What are hell runs? Just expand for us a little bit on hell runs, because that might be something people aren't familiar with.
Yeah, so we ran a lot across different army planes, essentially, that were tank tracks, etc. previously, and fairly boisterous, to be honest. It was a half marathon, but it was up and down dale into water and just almost like being back in the military, to be honest, but on steroids, as you said. So, through my own volition too, I think I paid 40 quid a go to go and do this thing and to inflict that pain on me. So yeah, particularly stupid. However, in the January, so just giving you a level really that I was fairly fit going into the January. I had previously passed blood in my urine, which because of the distance running, I assumed, as you do, that it was just friction. And so Dr. Google, that famous one, suggested that the blood in my urine was down to friction, down to distance, just down to dehydration, etc. So I gave it a stiff ignoring to for about 9 months. And then in the January, I was peeing and it was literally a Ribena coloured urine. So I saw my GP again. A bit of context behind that, I had passed urine with blood in before, and my doctor had given me some antibiotics, which he thought was because of my level of fitness and because of the role. The lack of knowledge then was, well, you're a fit young man. I was 40. It won't be anything sinister, so take these antibiotics. It's a urine infection. So I took that happily. In the January, it became... I had a car fire, actually, at Havant Fire Station down in Hampshire. About 3 a.m. I went for a pee afterwards, and yeah, it was horrific. So that day, I went to see my GP on an urgent, and she sent me really wisely, actually, to a thing called a hematuria clinic. So yeah, I was sent across to QA Hospital in Portsmouth, where they did an initial check, actually. They did a full body mass index, all that sort of stuff, all the less invasive stuff, which culminated, unfortunately, in a thing called a cystoscopy. Which is a camera, and you know where this is going to go. To access the bladder, they need to go into the urethra.
I've never seen that operation before. I imagine it's a little bit spicy. I always think that sort of thing should remain your out hole, never your in hole.
Yeah.
Although that could be said of other holes in the body, but again, that's probably more people's life choices. But anyway, I digress.
Yeah, unless you're into German porn,
yeah,
I suppose,
exactly.
then it really is just that. So yeah, I kind of braced myself. They did all the kidney checks and they were fine. So they lay you on the table. In fact, I got dressed in a gown first in a little sub room. Went in there. Luckily, I was in the military previously, so I was used to sharing a room with lots of other people. Sometimes choosing to get completely naked. So it wasn't a major issue. It was, though, the start of that chipping away of any dignity that I had, to be fair. So I was in a room, probably 12 by 12 feet, with 3 females, no drama. So yeah, going down, you lie on the settee, on the medical gurney, I suppose you'd call it, and then they insert the camera into the urethra after a period of about 5 seconds of gel insertion. So they insert gel into the tip of the penis, and then about a little finger thickness is the camera, if you can imagine that sort of thickness, right into the bladder. So it's probably about 80 centimeters, something like that. So it's about as long as your arm. The camera is slightly longer than your arm, and they just keep feeding it in. It's really slowly, and you have to cough on certain periods just to get through the prostate, because it's a sphincter essentially, which is the most bizarre. At this moment in my life, I just wanted this thing out, so I had my eyes closed, and it was just like, oh my God, this is outrageous.
What did you think was going on at this point? Like, why did you think they were doing these tests? What did you know? What had they told you so far?
So I was unsure. I probably, to be honest. I took the ferry from Gosport to Portsmouth in the morning, which is a 7-minute journey. I still love it to this day. I've been doing it for years, but it's a lovely little part of England, and just get on a little ferry and go across the Solent. Anyway, I left from Gosport to Portsmouth, and I kind of realised, I think then, this is probably the last time I ever get this ferry without a diagnosis. And it's quite profound, I know, but it was something that entered my mind just before going across. So I kind of knew something was afoot, and because I Googled it, of course. And I was going for the worst case scenario, which was kidney cancer. And kidney cancer is a different prognosis. So I thought the world was going to end, and it would be a real challenge. So I kind of knew, but hoped that it wasn't going to be that. And the common things happen often. And bladder cancer is a really uncommon thing for a 40-year-old. So again, that was in the back of my mind, thinking I might be winging this, I might just be over-exaggerating, it might be something else.
What did you tell your missus at this time?
Oh, God. So when I came home from the hospital, before I went, I rang her in the morning, because it was a very quick thing. I went to see the doctor in the morning, and then she said, I didn't tell her. I didn't tell her I was going across to the hospital. There was no need at that moment in time. She was at work, she had her own issues with her own job, and she's a scientist by trade, so she's got a lot to juggle with in a medical profession. So I got on with it, really. I caught public transport as well, which is strange, but I don't know. I don't normally, and that's not being a snob, I just have a car. So, I wouldn't utilise public transport unless it was better. So, yeah. When they got the camera into the urethra and then through the prostate, which was, as I suggested, really quite uncomfortable. My eyes were closed at this stage, and then the nurse said, "Do you want to look?" And I was like, "Fucking no! Just get this thing away from me, get it out of me." And of course you're tense, which is the worst thing you can do with a urethra. You've tensed your muscles are all. So this is now trying to grab hold of the camera, So that you want it out, but they can't put it out now because it's it's a catch-22 or a catch something or other. So she said, "Do you want to look?" And then I had a quick eye open, just like, and like a pirate, that was, wasn't it? That was quite a good pirate. So I looked on the screen, and there was a fist-sized coral tumour attached to the bladder wall, which was just ugly, disgusting, blood infused, and had its own blood supply, obviously, and was almost winking at you. It was waving in the bladder fluids, and yeah. And then from there, everybody's face went glum in the room because it was quite an aggressive and quite a significant sized tumour. So everybody kind of had an upside down face at that stage. Whereas before, they were still upbeat. And the darkness entered the room almost. So withdrew the camera, and that was the end of normality, I suppose.
This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Gore-Tex Professional Fabrics. Now, we all know the working environment of a firefighter is filled with challenges. We face serious risks on the job, such as heat exhaustion, burns, physical and mental stress, and we frequently come into contact with high levels of toxic chemicals. Now, I have been wearing Gore-Tex for nearly 2 decades on the front line, working in hostile environments, tackling challenging incidents from firefighting to water incidents and in urban search and rescue environments. Gore-Tex have a well-earned reputation for protecting professionals in the fire and emergency services through their family of highly innovative, waterproof, breathable moisture barriers that exceeds global performance standards and are trusted worldwide. Gore-Tex, going further together.
So yeah, I stood up from the process of the cystoscopy, feeling a little bit dizzy and a little bit, just a rabbit in the headlights, I suppose. Still very surreal, still wasn't me. It was almost like an out-of-body experience. And I remember going into the ante-room where my civvies, my clothes were, so to go and get dressed back into my normal attire. And I woke up. So it seems, as we know now, that I'd fainted. So a thing called a nocturia. I'd gone back into the ante-room, woke up on the floor. As I'd gone down, I headbutted the sink, which is, don't advise that actually. Ow. So I've gone down and, I've got quite a big nose and it's been broken before, but that was more sort of talking when I should have been listening. But so this one was, so it caught me across the tip of my nose. You can just about see
it. No, I can see it.
Yeah.
Why
and it
why
kind of
did
bent
that
a bit. So
just why was the cause of that?
So I think it was twofold. One was that I just had something inserted in the wrong way, as you said, and the brain doesn't like that. So the brain will just try and shut down. Huge, huge shock. God, what is that?
Yeah.
So it was a syncope. So it's called a micturate syncope. So syncope is a faint, and micturation to micturate is to wee. So it's a weeing faint essentially.
Oh, wow.
There was that. Yeah, that's the scientific wording for it. The real wording was that I was just overcome with shock, I think, overcome with it all. And I'd never fainted up until then, never ever. I'd never passed that in any way, shape, or form. So this was just an overload of senses and information, and my body didn't want to process it. So it shut down. As I said, I headbutted this. I don't know how long I was down for, probably a couple of minutes, to be honest. Because I could hear some talking when I came to. And then I remember walking back into the cystoscopy room, into the theatre, if you will, holding my nose and all over the place. And the nurses were like, oh, my God, what have you done? What have you done? And I remember one of them saying, that is going to cost me a load of paperwork.
Yeah, because
just like us at work,
you've just created a new process there. We've got to watch people for 3 minutes after they come out of the thing now.
Simply. Yeah. So I changed what they do, which, is a good thing, because you shouldn't be falling over like that in a little room.
Oh, God, imagine if an old lady.
Bearing in mind, this is an old... That's just what I was going to say. This is an older person's disease. So it is normally 60 plus, people with dodgy hips and, things starting to fail them. So, I've gone back into the room and holding my nose. Straight away, they paged the on-call A&E doc, who came running up. I'm now on a gurney type thing, holding my nose with a big old split through it. So then they were whisking me down to A&E. So it's a really rubbish day. I'd never been to a hospital before. I'd never had any sedation or...
You've done well to get to 40.
God. Yeah.
God, I've had about 3 surgeries so far. Well, 3 big ones and then several other ones. And hospital's weird.
Right.
It's great. And we're so lucky to be alive at this period of time, but it's not a fun place to make a regular visit to, as you know better than anyone.
No. Well, yeah, I'm kind of friends with them there on a first name term. It's unfortunate. But, going back to the cystoscopy, I remember having had that surgery in my nose, but there was a young girl in there, and I remember she was probably only 9 or 10. I had a 7-year-old daughter at the time, so I could really empathise. And she was having a cystoscopy as well for whatever reason. And I remember hearing, it was just horrific for her. So in that respect, I was quite lucky. I took some solace from the fact that actually I am grown and I can process what's going on a little bit more.
Yeah.
So silver linings, I suppose. So anyway, I'd gone in.
That reframing, that
Sorry.
reframing is such a gift, and I find it's sad that it's most powerful and most prevalent in people that have really gone. I feel like when you go through things that you've been through and are still going through, because the worst thing that's ever happened to you is the worst thing that's ever happened to you, and that makes the size of your spectrum. But every time something better or something worse happens, it's like your spectrum widens. And then you almost got more context to reframe things and go, oh yeah, but it's not that bad. It's not this, is it? Or it's not that.
Absolutely.
Whereas for some people, we can catastrophize our way through the day with a series of very minor tragedies, which aren't even anything that it's like a very small speed bump you would roll over in the normal day. But some people that can absolutely knock them dead.
Yeah, but it's all relative, isn't it? So your worst day, as you just said, is your worst day, regardless of what that process is. I think that pain is something that I'd not really. I'd broken my nose and my knuckle and knocked teeth out and stuff back in the day, and they were uncomfortable for sure. But then this was a different kind, as you know about pain with surgery. This is a different kind of process, both physical and mental. So from that day, the black dog has really overtaken me on occasion. Sends you to a really dark place, as I'm sure you're aware of, and sometimes you need some assistance to get out of there. So infrequently I go and see my GP. I'm still on antidepressants to this day to get me through the challenges of it all. So
holding nose, covered in blood, poorly Willie.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my God. Was down to A&E where the young doctor, I remember he's what happened? And I remember looking him in the eyes actually and saying, I've just been told I got cancer and I fainted. He didn't say anything else. He didn't ask any more questions. He just got on with the stitching because I'd summed up, I think, that was that. My nose is gone because I fainted, because I've just got this massive tumour that they want to get out. Then proceeded the 7 stitches across here. 2 black eyes, closing rapidly, just looking like a mess, really. So had all that done, and then had some paperwork shoved in my hand, and basically we'll be in touch very soon. Just what is up, what is down, what is left, what is right kind of situation at that stage. Bearing in mind I'm still using public transport. My wife actually at this stage had gone home and was looking after the 2 kids, collected them from childcare, etc. So I got the bus back from...
Had you contacted her already?
No.
No. Okay.
No. No, it was... I was still very, what am I going to do? How am I going to process? What next step? Am I going to die, essentially? Have I got things in place for that?
How young were your children at this time?
I got back on the 5 and 7, and I had an older lad, so I've got
very young.
And 17. So I've got one from a former marriage, Sam, my eldest, who was 17 at the time. So going through a difficult time of his own, just hasten to add, puberty and girlfriends and yeah. So chaos reigned, really. I got back on public transport now with 2 black eyes closing rapidly, looking like a panda with 7 stitches. So it looked like I'd been fisticuffs. So, which is fine because I live in Gosport and everybody has fisticuffs down here because it's rough. So, should I edit that part? I don't know.
No.
I'm not from
here. Were you even conscious there? Though I mean, obviously you were conscious. I mean, like, I've no idea how I would feel in that moment. I felt like I'd just be numb. I don't know. You're thinking everything and nothing at the same time.
Yeah. Is this real? Am I going to wake up? Yeah, literally, it was that, that cliche, am I going to wake out of this? And is that just been really horrible, really rubbish day?
Yeah.
Yes, very bizarre. So I remember walking out of the hospital, getting towards the bus stop, and people were looking at me because of the significant facial injuries. And it was quite an odd one. But as I said, I got back on the bus in Gosport and got back to my house. I remember opening the front door to see my daughter on the stairs. And then she fell over and collapsed as well when she saw me. So she literally lost her legs because of the state of my face. And yeah, she was on the floor. And then my wife was like, what's wrong? So she then came out and saw me. So I think I don't remember a great deal of that part. But I remember taking my wife into the kitchen, closing the door with the kids outside of the room and saying, I've got a cancer in my bladder and we need to get things done. And then she's very strong, my wife. She works in the medical profession, as I said. She's been my brick. Held me together, really. When it gets dark, she's the person who kicks me in the arse, tells me to get on with it, which I need because it's easy for us to dwell, isn't it? It's easy for us to become dark.
It is.
Absolutely. I'm still here, 12 years on, thinking 12 years ago, actually, I remember looking at my old dog, bless her soul, Daisy dog. She was beautiful and she had a big lump on her shoulder. She was about 13 or 14 at the time. We had her till she was 17. But I remember being with her that day, looking at her and thinking, who's going to pass first? Because quite a strange thing, because we thought she had cancer as well at the time. And I was thinking, it was just really, really hard. Just thinking, actually, shit, this is it. This is the start of the end.
In other news, this episode is brought to you in partnership with MSA Safety. Today we have them to thank for the improved firefighter safety through connectivity in their brand new connected firefighter system. At the centre of the connected firefighter platform is the MSA M1 SCBA with telemetry. You can view battery life, air pressure and estimated time remaining either independently on the M1 itself or from the Luna connected device screen. Also, still with the air status, alarm information, search status and all of this provided to the incident command for confident decision making during the scene. That integrates straight in with the Luna system, which is a wireless all-in-one device creating an independent search and rescue network, providing edge detection, enhanced personal thermal imaging, while simplifying post-scene reporting and data retention. One of the key parts of the Luna is their FAST system, the Firefighting Assisting Search Technology. This combines directional and distance information with thermal imaging to help find separated teammates and decrease response time. It actually connects you to the other crews in the vicinity for a unified search during the time of mutual aid by instantly notifying the network of Luna devices when there is a downed crew member, allowing for a prompt search and rescue. All of this then plugs into the FireGrid system for cloud-based connectivity, real-time information, and data-driven decisions for the incident commander. It enables you to see the exact location of your firefighters on the scene. And it doesn't require you to be sat on the station. The MSA hub then provides a wireless gateway straight to the cloud, enabling wireless on-scene data for local and remote incident command for additional eyes on the scene. MSA are truly taking massive strides in the future of improved firefighter safety through connectivity. MSA is dedicated to increasing safety in the fire service through technological advancements. Various feature enhancements, new products, partnerships, and integrations will provide additional capabilities readily accessible by products, software, and services in the brand new MSA Connected Firefighter platform. Now back to the show. Were you annoyed? Were you angry? Were you upset?
Absolutely.
Were you disappointed in
and going forward,
the world or yourself, or I don't know.
Horrified. So at that moment in time, it was just disgusted that this could be me, and why? Why am I 40 and why am I having this potential trauma going forward, which turned out to be lots of trauma? Why have I been chosen? Or I don't believe, I'm an atheist, I have to say. So nothing for me is spiritual.
I think religion has died for a lot of people for a whole bunch of different reasons, and I'm not remotely religious, and I'm whatever, respect everyone and all their beliefs and all that sort of jazz. But the world it would be hard to find a logic or a plan or anything in some of the things that are manifesting in our conceivable world at the minute, through people, life, environment. You're just like, anyway, we digress. But whatever it is, even if it's just the universe, you just think, oh wow, it's fascinating. Just what has happened to cause that strange adaptation of the cells in your body. Why is that? Why, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And why me? So when I was diagnosed, within maybe 3 or 4 hours, I spoke to my best mate, Gav Atkin. So Gav is a star. He's a lovely guy from Middlesbrough for his sins, but
doesn't make him a bad bloke.
He was in the Navy still. No, it just makes him more than. So he was still serving in the Navy, which was my former career, as you know. So I rang him and said, wow. He then left work, bless him. Obviously told his boss that he needed to leave sharpish, which is unusual for the military because they tell you when you leave. Anyway, within a pair of hours, he turned up, and I met him in a Wetherspoons pub in Gosport, again, fully facially closed, which is fine for a Spoons because, as I mentioned, most people are. So
you fit right in.
I blended in. I did. He came in and was, again, he was one of my strongest allies throughout this too. So he appeared, kind of ushered me away, and we got pissed, which was a mechanism, it's a form of military mechanism for dealing with good and bad, and it worked for that moment in time. Then going forward, I remember speaking to my father, who was living in Australia, and telling him he was suffering with prostate cancer. It's called oligometastatic, so it already spread outside of the prostate and it eventually killed him, unfortunately. But we had a lot longer with him than we'd expected because of the drugs and the trials and just him being him, really. But there was already that link. I'd already experienced somebody going through chemotherapy and pain and suffering and the mental anguish of it all. Although he never tried to share that with us, I could still see it. And I just embarked on that journey, I think. So that day I'd started on that journey that I know he went through. So straight away I rang him, told him the news, and within 2 days he'd flown over, which he was a remarkable man, and I miss him. But again, he came and spent a month or so in the UK, just talking me through, taking me through the hurdles, telling me what to expect, what not to expect. His was transurethral surgery too, so he was under no illusion as to what was going on. So people started to work around me. Then they started to help.
What did talk to us about the professional side of life for a split second? Because again, I'll have put it into the intro. But how long were you in the Navy for, and how long had you then been in the fire service for at this point?
So I most of my life I've been in uniform, one or the other. So I joined the Navy twice. So initially joined at 16 as a young, keen sailor. Lasted a year purely because I fell in love, as we do. Moved down to Cornwall, where I stayed with the young lady for a little while. That didn't work. So in '92, the choices were go one way at that crossroads in life, if you know what I mean, or join the military. So I had to join the military, which is a good thing. Otherwise, it would have perhaps gone a little bit awry. So, yeah, I joined in '92. Spent 15 years before the mast, doing all sorts of stuff all around the world, having fantastic time mostly. 3 tours of so Sierra Leone, Bosnia, and Iraq, which were interesting. So
Thank you for your service.
it gives you more of a rounded. No, no problem, no problem. So yeah, I left that age 34 and fell into this wonderful
Why
job.
did you leave?
My boyhood dream. I think because to be honest with you, it was because I'd come back from Iraq. Totally honest, on the record that we weren't there to help. I don't think we were there because of the oil. So my moral compass wouldn't allow that. Things we did and perhaps were a little bit, we know now to be almost a war crime. So I wasn't putting my name to that anymore. So
It's
yeah,
so
I
horrible,
stepped away.
isn't it? Because we have such incredible individuals, great moral compass, values, very well trained, very well driven. And it's a bit like having a parent who's lost their way and they've got a bunch of amazing, dedicated, loyal kids who will literally lay down their lives for that parent. And the parent has got themselves into a bad deal. But the kid would know no different. You know what I mean? Because they're just so... You cut them in half and they are that person, their core family, country, whatever it might be. Yeah, I don't pretend to know. I've never served in the military, but a number of people that I speak to, and it reminds me, as much as people will say, "Oh, Pete, that's a load of bullshit. That's a bit much." The old Mein Kampf books, when I used to read, I've read some of the Hitler stuff, and the soldiers always used to say, "We're only following orders." And that was their way of trying to hold their moral compass together with super glue and duct tape. It was like, well, I'm only following orders. And you're like, doesn't this feel wrong? Go through the logic
Absolutely.
trap in your head. You're like, I'm struggling here. I'm struggling to stick with it because it's. But anyway, we're not going to go any further than that into the political minefield.
Well, it was a kill or be killed, wasn't it? My grandfather, wonderful human being. Again, he was at 8th Army in North Africa. He had to go. He spent 4 or 5 years out in that part of the world, that horrendous part of the world during the conflict. So for me, I had that very real choice. The options were, I'm not doing this anymore. And from a senior management, so I was a petty officer at the time, trying to keep the troops happy in the Middle East at that moment in time. And it was very difficult. We were underfunded. The military had no money. We couldn't afford spare parts for the vessels we were on, essentially. So nothing was working. And it was a nightmare. So one of the reasons was, not great. Morale was an all-time low. They can't recruit currently. So it's a bit of a mess. But again, going down away from that political thing, handed my notice in. Yeah, I'd had enough. I'd done the 15 years, as I said. I had a young family. My wife was pregnant at the moment, so it was the right thing to do. And it turned out it was the right thing to do. So I was really lucky that I got into this job. Started on January the 23rd, 2006. And I've loved it ever since, really. Ups and downs, as you well know. But in the main...
Why do you think so many people from the
fantastic
military
job.
are attracted to things like the fire service? Because I think we should actively recruit more out of the military. Not like we're trying to steal good talent, but if people want to leave, it's a great place for them to go, I think.
I think so. Yeah, I think it's a comfortable... It's almost a second military without being too militaristic, isn't it? It's still a uniform. We still... Again, as you said, I'm just being told what to do. And that's often the case with... I think a lot of military are still quite bright, just... perhaps misguided sometimes. And it's easier to be told what to do than it is to think, isn't it, sometimes? And the fire service is that. Somebody tells you what to do on all levels, really, unless you're the chief.
And they're good. They're conditioned.
So,
do you know what I mean? They're good problem solvers. They get shit done. Do you know what I mean? They're good at command and control. They're very much a plug and play model. It's rich. Point them in the right direction.
Yeah, I agree.
Play. And they get that value of being part of something that matters, which is the reason they joined the military at first. And maybe, again, different bodies, different careers. Some people in the military, as you kind of alluded to, some people will have lost, there'll have been several filters put over what they think they're part of. Whereas in the fire and rescue service, in the majority, you're right at the coalface. You can see the thing you do. and you do actually, you live in the community, or you see the outcomes of the incidents and all this sort of stuff, it feels like you're doing a good thing, and you get all that camaraderie and everything like that. I think we should recruit a lot more people in the military. But anyway, you decided to jump over to that 2006, started that career. So you'd have been 6-7 years in when you had this new health challenge / surprise / fucking Titanic of the iceberg.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And when at age 40, I was still fairly new to the service. I hadn't experienced anybody who'd been ill in the service, so I had no idea what the process was to follow. So yeah, going back to the process, I told my wife, told my family, my nearest family. My mum had passed at that stage, so just my dad came over. He was my support. I then had to speak to work and tell them that actually this is what it is.
Might not be in on
I had
Monday.
a boss at the time. I won't mention. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, or Tuesday I went. So yeah, I had a really supportive watch as well. I remember one of my colleagues burst into tears when I went in and said, "Look, fellas, this is where we are at the minute," and they were all understandably a little bit shocked. And one of the guys just burst into tears. It's lovely, not lovely, but really supportive.
Yeah,
because we wear our heart on our sleeves, don't we? So I have to say, in all honesty, the fire service, Hampshire and Isle of Wight Fire and Rescue, have been fantastic. They really have been supportive across the piece. I couldn't have asked for more. If I was a self-employed, I probably would have lost my house, quite honestly. So I've been on full pay throughout this process. So going back to, the process was, I was waiting for a letter and then a phone call, and within 2 weeks of my initial diagnosis, I was in for surgery, which again I'd never had. I was super nervous. I remember being just mad. Patient, very anxious, I think, was on my notes. I just bit of a control freak, and all of a sudden I was not in control at all.
Yeah.
It had been taken completely from me, and I remember the surgeon, and I'll mention him, Byron Walmsley, he was called, was very rude, very arrogant, and a bit of a butcher, to be honest. So whether you got to edit that out or not, I don't know. But
no. Well, so the person that did the surgery on my chest, so I tore my whole right pec off my shoulder, horrible, stupid thing. Anyway, the doctor I can't actually remember that name, but when I went in there, they were like, "Oh, you lift lots of weights, you do this, you do that." I'm saying this because they had a heavy South African accent. I can't do the accent, but they were like,
right.
"This is bad for you," blah blah blah, and I was like, "Yeah, it is. What are we having a fucking lecture here? I know I've done wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
You're making me feel bad before I go for the thing," and I was like, I felt really awkward, and this was private healthcare. I was like, I felt like I want someone different. But anyway, he did it. Don't think he did an amazing job. And it still doesn't look right. I've still got a physical disfigurement in my chest. And it doesn't work like it's supposed to. Anyway, that feeling where you're like, oh no, this person's going to be taking a blade to me in a couple of hours. They don't think they like me.
Yeah. No, absolutely that. So I remember, as you know yourself, the process, certainly NHS-wise, is you have the healthcare assistant do all the bloods and the weights and all that stuff. Excuse me. And then the anaesthetist comes in and you've got to sign a bit of paper to say, actually, if I kill you, it's not my fault. Again,
isn't it weird, isn't it? People won't know this. The anaesthetist is a totally different profession. They're like a private contractor. The doctor and the surgeon and all the nursing team and the surgical team all do one thing. And the anaesthetist just comes in on their own. They weigh you in the morning, ask you a bunch of questions, sign some paperwork that says, I'm going to try not to kill you, but if you die, this stuff is not a perfect science. And you're like, okay. Yeah. And then they see you in the first little room, and then you're not awake when you get pushed through to the next room. But weird.
Really, really weird. Really weird. Really strange. So I signed that bit of paper, and then Byron Walmsley came in, and he was probably at the time 60-year-old, miserable, not happy with his job. And I'll always remember looking down, he had a pair of white wellies on, which he shouldn't have, because this is a level up from theatres, so he's actually up one floor, honestly. So urology, you have to wear wellies, just for the obvious squirts of water and fluids and stuff. And I remember looking at his wellies, and there were blood clots on it, and it was just inappropriately wrong and horrible. And of course, I'm really nervous and I'm really unaware of what the future was and what the next step was. Never had a general anaesthetic, and there was no hearts and minds from this guy. Didn't shake my hand. I offered my hand, wasn't interested.
No, oh, that's a whole different thing. You offer your hand and shake it.
Absolutely.
Come on.
Yeah.
Mate, I might die now.
I know. Wrong. Exactly. So just a really surreal situation. I remember it only took 2 weeks, and I'll move on to that in a moment. But yeah, 2 weeks from start to finish, basically, for my first surgery. I went down, sharp scratch back of the hand kind of thing, and then fell asleep, woke up, just with a catheter in and all the other bits and pieces, and a dose of chemo had already been left in the bladder too.
Really?
After they removed us.
Straight into it.
What then transpired was that both straight into it. Yeah, no holds barred. Is your wife picking you up? Yeah, good. It's all that stuff. And I remember waking up in just, Jesus, that really hurts. Really is uncomfortable. Because the rigid cystoscopy, so the flexi one is the one that's that sort of thick. The rigid one is thicker, and so they have to pass things through the tube. They put a straight tube straight into the bladder through your bits, and then insert all the different cameras and lasers and all the other stuff to cut off the tumours. So they split the end of me bits by a couple of mil as well. A couple of
Why don't they just make an?
I
I was going to say, why don't they just make another hole? But the more holes you make, the more damage you're going to do. You want to mess about with the thing as little as possible. But
exactly.
I mean, I know women have to go through it similar. It's not similar, but they're like designed for it. You know, it's like this thing will stretch. It might rip, might be a bit damaged. It'll kind of reform. I suppose maybe we're just soft as hell. I don't know. Maybe we're just being pussies. I don't know.
That's what it is. Yeah, that's it, mate. And I can't black cat a pregnancy. I've been there for childbirth, and it's much more intense than I had probably. But I've had man flu, and that doesn't compare to anything.
Exactly. So
it's on a par.
Let's not point fingers, girls. All right.
Absolutely. So that was I woke up and then I sort of said, so what's happened? What procedures had happened? And both the anaesthetist and the doctor, Walmsley, had buggered off, so nobody knew. And I'm thinking, did they get it all? Is it straight away thinking, oh my God, what's happening now? No aftercare, which was really upsetting, to be honest. For my first experience, it got much better because I had a voice, and I have to advocate that we need to tell our surgeons, our medical people, what we want. It isn't the other way around. We tell them what we require. They work, they work to serve, almost the same as we work to serve. So sometimes that God complex has to be beaten out of them. So I remember my first pee. So I've woken up, they give you a piece of toast, as you know, you sit in a little ante room, you wake up, oh, here we go, groggy and horrible. My wife was waiting for me. It's about 6 o'clock at night now. And I had to go for my first pee, and my wife was allowed in for this process, and you have to provide urine before you can go, obviously.
We have to wee and poo, don't you, usually, to make sure everything works.
Yeah.
We have to see you do both.
Exactly. Yeah. So I remember my wife was holding me on my back, and I had both hands above the urine, the trap, to go for a pee. And again, nearly fainted just by going for a pee. She had to hold me up because it was, oh my God, this is just outrageous. Trying to pee in chemo as well, with acid, nasty, cytotoxic, bloody horrible crap through your bits that they'd left in for an hour or 2 hours, whatever it was. So you're peeing that through already scarred, cut, ripped, open wounds, all the way along the shaft of the urethra, and so that was an interesting pee.
And I bet barely anything came out anyway.
No, a little dribble of claret and a clot, I think.
Most of it went on my legs.
Yeah. I should have kept it, shouldn't I? Little trophy. So I remember my wife couldn't be any better. So basically shuffled me into the car. I went home, and that recovery process started, essentially, just a long process. And then 6 weeks later, back in for a checkup to see what was what, under general anaesthetic again, where they found even more bloody tumour growth. And that was the cycle of events for so I've had 19 surgeries. No, I haven't. I've had 30 plus surgery. I think 32 general anaesthetics over the 12 years.
Whoa.
Of which, I'm much more adept at it now. It's fascinating. The whole machine, as you know, the machine of the NHS is just incredible. When it works beautifully, it works phenomenally, doesn't it?
Yeah.
From from initial walk-in, when you check in with a QR code now, all the way to the place you've got to go, level 4 at QA for me in Portsmouth, go into the urology part, they do what they've got to do, and then the machine works, it kicks in, you go through those double doors, they give you a pillow. I don't know if you've been in a similar situation, but you've got to take your own pillow down.
No, I don't think I've been that
and your slippers. No, they literally, here you go, carry that in a little blanket, and you walk through it, through the doors where you're in the motorway part of the hospital, the bit that nobody else gets to see. And then you walk down to your theatre because there's no need to push you. You can walk still. Yeah. So you walk past all these devices, saws, axes, bloody brutal looking bits of kit, because there are 18 or 20 different, what do they call them, operating theatres. And you're walking past lots of different ones. I remember, really wrong probably, but I was walking down with one of the ODPs, operating department practitioners, whose role is to assist in theatre. They come and collect you. So walking past, and I remember somebody clearly died somewhere, and they were wheeling the body past me on the opposite lane. It's all covered up in green, but obviously down to the mortuary in the back part that we don't get to see. And I remember looking at the ODP saying, "That's not from my theatre, is it?" And she just gave me a scornful look. "That's not number 17's theatre. I ain't going in there." Which, yes,
isn't it crazy though? Who was I speaking to yesterday? Was it yesterday? I had someone on the podcast, and we were talking about how this is someone's every day. Like when they're making decisions, when the doctors are sitting down giving this news, and again, there's no excuse for rudeness, but we spoke about conditioning earlier for the military, and in any profession you get conditioning, don't you? And this stuff is every day for you. When someone says, "Oh, we'll get him in 2 weeks." Yeah, we'll have Robbie in 2 weeks. Yeah, let him know. That's it. Just next. Yeah. The next one was next one's brain tumor. Okay, yeah, it's a 10-year-old girl. Whatever. Yeah. Okay, wow. Yeah. Let's get her in on Thursday. Let's try and quick chat, meet her mum and dad, blah blah, and then that person, that doctor, she might go home to her. She's got to go and get little Johnny from football later, and that's just the way her
switch off.
Just had to tell Robbie, that's the last surgery we can really do, mate. We haven't got any more answers here. Wow. Yeah. What a mental roller coaster it must be for them as well. And I say that just to give respect. I really want to have a surgeon on the podcast. If I've had a doctor on before, we should have more people like that on, because I think they're fascinating as well.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And, I was probably a bit deprecating to Byron Walmsley. He had probably just told, maybe potentially, as you've just said, he may have told somebody that it was the end of the game. So
you never know.
You have to be cold.
But anyway.
No, you don't. So, there's a certain way of dealing with stuff, and we all deal with things differently. So he dealt with his processing differently, I suspect. But you're right, fascinating, an amazing group of people. And in theatre itself, you lie down on the couch, on the gurney again, and everybody's just magical. They do wonderful things. Everybody's talking to you, engaging with you, letting you know. And because I'm quite understanding now, and I like to find out exactly what the process is, I know what's next now. So when they come in, I learned actually that the propofol, the white stuff that Michael Jackson was addicted to, is an alkali, quite a high alkali, and it burns in some respects. And it does to me. So only for 3 or 4 seconds till you fall asleep. But that 3 or 4 seconds is quite uncomfortable. So you can have a lignocaine, which is like a magic. They call it gin and tonic in the game. Here's your gin and tonic, Mr. Burns. Oh yes, that's a champion. So out of all this darkness of surgeries, I always ask for a little bit, because it's absolutely magic. That 3 or 4 seconds of this gear, whatever it is, before the propofol goes in, is just worth it almost just for that little magic. So
six weeks later, I am a record addict, so I have to be so careful with stuff like that. I'd be writing that down and Googling it after our conversation, the old version.
Me too.
Anyway, 6 weeks later, you come back optimistic to hear that things are going in the right direction, and are met with your first set or second set, I suppose, of disappointing updates. Today's podcast is powered by our partner Lifelines and their revolutionary approach to functional hydration. Just like in firefighting, water is essential for body function, but studies show more than 80% of firefighters are dehydrated. A 25-year study findings from the National Institute of Health showed poor hydration to be linked to early aging and chronic disease, and even mild dehydration results in significant negative impact outcomes, including headaches, exhaustion, rapid pulse, irritability, and poor cognitive function. A study conducted by Yale University showed that participants who were just 1% dehydrated had a 12% increase in errors when performing tasks that required cognitive flexibility. In addition, dehydration is shown to worsen mood and attitude, contribute to confusion and poor decision making, and negatively affect memory and judgment. In other words, you really don't want your incident commander, firefighter, or for that matter any first responder on a critical scene to be even slightly dehydrated. Mild dehydration occurs when a person is just 1.5% dehydrated, a condition that does not even trigger the thirst response in most people. So just imagine how quickly a firefighter or any first responder can and does become dehydrated in their day-to-day duties, which is why I address my hydration first thing every day with Lifelines. Go into the notes for this episode and specifically check out Lifeline's Hydro Fuel and Hydro OG by clicking in the notes for the podcast for a clean energy solution designed for those who demand more from their day. Now back to the show.
Absolutely, yeah. So it was literally that. I woke up and a guy called Stuart Hall, he's a fantastic surgeon. In complete contrast to my first procedure, Stuart Hall's former RAF wing commander who came across to urology. He was a urologist in the RAF, but he then left that service, joined the NHS, obviously, and it's just a different gravy, really, different level of human being. Fantastic. Call me Stuart. So straight away, it's not Mr. Walmsley or doctor or what, it was call me Stuart. This is where we sit. This is what we're at. You're young. But I have to say, throughout the 30 surgeries, everybody, I would say every surgeon is like, you're very young for this, which leads me on in a little while. So the procedure 6 weeks later was rubbish. It had come back. And then another one about 6 weeks later was the same. Not massive growth, but growth.
Is that another up the urethra look? Or is it a different sort of scan?
Yeah. No, same thing. So it was the full under general anaesthesia.
You're like a flaccid balloon.
So it takes 6 weeks to recover.
You must have. That's a busy old motorway you've got in your body. That is.
Yeah. It's a windsock. Yeah, it's a windsock.
It's a windsock.
It whistles when I walk and everything now. It comes to attention. So yeah, for a period of time, it was grim. They 6 weeks there was another growth. 6 weeks there was another growth. So they made the decision at MDT, which is a multidisciplinary team. So that's all the professionals of every level within oncology, urology, anaesthesia, come together in a meeting once a week, and they discuss all the patients that they're going to see or have seen. And MDT came out to say that I needed 6 weeks of chemotherapy as soon as possible, a drug called mitomycin, which was intravesical, which means it goes into the bladder, stays in the bladder essentially. So that was the course of next step.
Why? Because these other growths were just too small for surgical intervention, or it was like,
oh no, they were removed every time. So they were removed, sorry. But they kept coming back. So bladder cancer is the most recurrent, literally the most recurrent disease of all cancers, and the most expensive because of that recurrence. So it just kept appearing again, produced from the kidney, comes down into the bladder, attaches to the bladder, and there we go again. So they thought they would try and hit it pretty hard. So they got this 6 week process. Once a week, I'd go back to hospital, have chemotherapy into the bladder, and try and nail it that way. Happy days, did that for 6 weeks. I was clear for about, I think, 3 or 4 more checkups every 6 weeks. Again, under general anaesthetic.
How was chemo?
And then the bugger came back. Grim, to be fair.
Seems to be the main reviews it gets, that is.
Yeah, pretty negative in all respects. It's painful, it's uncomfortable, it's knackered my hips, to be honest. I mean, I'm still here. My eyesight is very bad now, my teeth. So it is all round grim, has a massive effect.
Does it do
so
to
the
you?
surgeries...
So I've Googled it and I've had a look at it, but for people that they hear someone's going through chemo, what is it doing?
Well, this particular mitomycin is almost a topical fluid. It goes into where the bladder is. So it doesn't go intravenously. It's not in a vein. It's into the bladder through the urethra, through a catheter, essentially.
So that's why you haven't lost all your hair.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, exactly that. So it's targeted. So this kind of melts and boils and burns away any of the tumour and any of the cells. So it takes all the mucosa, the manky stuff on the bladder wall.
It takes everything else with it as well, I bet.
Absolutely. Your dignity, your sex drive, all those things. Everything that a man wants at the age of 40
Yeah.
was taken, really, stolen. Um, so yeah, it was a long process then of every 6 weeks going back in to find more shitty news, and oh my God, what's happening here? And then I remember another guy, one of the doctors I'd seen because Stuart was off or whatever. I saw another surgeon, and he said, "Oh, Mr. Burns, you're not out of the woods yet, are you?" And I'm thinking, "Thank you for that. That's very kind." What do you mean by that? Straight away was the answer. Well, you're not out of the woods. This is still a very progressive illness, very progressive disease that you have, and da 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 da. So I was kind of coming to terms with this might be every 6 weeks, and I can live with that. Hopefully, I'll live. But then he kind of said we need to be a bit more invasive. So after about, I think, 20 something surgeries at QA in Portsmouth, I was put on. I was given a heads up that the best urology hospital in the country is Guy's and St Thomas in London. So I went through the process, obviously wrote to them and said, this is where I sit. I'm really keen to get a thing called a blue light cystoscopy. And the blue light is on the ultraviolet scale. It's not ultraviolet, but it sits amongst that colour spectrum, if you like. And the blue light is where they insert a dye into the bladder. Then the blue light cystoscopy goes in and it looks for cancers that are very young, essentially, that can be blatted at an earlier stage, and for any other. So mine wasn't a thing called a cancer in situ. Mine was just a tumour growth, or is a tumour growth on the bladder wall, which is less invasive than the CIS, but still needs jobbing. So,
was there any conversation about just taking your whole bladder out?
Yes, there was.
How early on was that? Because it's like it's kind of the whole. Oh, in fact, I've just remembered. A gentleman we had on the other day, firefighter with one leg, so he had a tragic injury and lots of surgery, spinal surgery, blah blah blah. And the last thing that was causing him issues was his ankle, and they wanted to keep trying to fix the ankle, and he eventually opted to have his leg amputated.
Jesus,
which is that's a strange solution, but it just made me, I was connecting the dots from our conversation here, and it made me think, like, at what point is it like, lose the limb, get rid of my bladder, just in case. Do you know what I mean? Because it's a bit like keeping hold of a business, thinking you can make it get going again, and then all of a sudden it makes you lose your house, or it makes the other business bankrupt, or it spreads to the rest of the body. You're like, lose the limb. I don't know. Maybe
and that's a really good analogy.
I don't know.
No, that was
but
really good.
You'd had, because after 3 or 4 surgeries, I'd maybe be thinking, is there a let's stop this at the door solution?
Yeah.
But I know
that was the conversations I had.
It's not an easy decision. It's not like you haven't got another one like you have your leg, and it's hard to put in a replacement bladder.
No. Exactly, and there are no transport opportunities, no transplant options for that. So it is what it is. At that time, I remember after probably 10 surgeries, something like that, I spoke with the professionals and said, "What's the drill? I'm bored of this now." And as you said, I'm worried about disease spread. They found a tumour up in my left ureter, which is the attachment tube to the kidney, which is very close to the kidney, obviously. And I'm thinking, I don't want it going any more north, really, to the kidney, because the kidney is an index. That's you. So that was a conversation, a very robust conversation, I have to say, and it was, I want it out, really. Can you do that? He said, yeah, absolutely, we can do that, but it would involve a Da Vinci machine, which is a robotic, fantastic bit of kit, but a robotic, and about an 8-hour procedure to remove the bladder. So quite an invasive surgery.
And then a robotic
his
bladder.
words to that were,
Is that, sorry?
No, a robotic surgery, sorry. So it's...
All right, okay.
And a Da Vinci robotic surgery. So I'd asked for that. They kind of MDT'd it. They went back up to the top table, I suppose, spoke about it, and then came back to say that it would be like using a sledgehammer to crack a nut at that stage. It was a grade 2 tumour of 3 grades, and it was a T1 of 4. So it was still a T1, which is great, but it was the grade. So the grade is different to the severity. The severity is the depth it went through the bladder wall, essentially.
So whilst it's really annoying for you, it's actually working. We can just keep sweeping the water away from the front door. We haven't got to build a 10-foot flood barricade. You know what I mean? It's like what we're doing is working.
Yep.
just going to keep pushing it back. I know it's annoying for you.
Exactly.
To create a great lifestyle, but you are still physically fully mobile. The surgeries we're doing isn't killing you, so we're just going to keep doing this.
Yeah, and exactly that. They kept plugging away, and it worked to a degree. The QA hospital down in Portsmouth doesn't have the same urological, I suppose, doctrine as Guides does, and capabilities and funding, because a central, a metropolitan hospital will always get funded because it's a vote winner, unfortunately. But it is what it is. So I have to to and fro in with my GP. Yeah, it is. I chose, and I have to advocate to anybody who might be listening to this, you can choose where you have your treatment. So Google across the board, across the country. If you're willing to travel, there are places you can go that are excellent, have a degree of excellence.
That's what Josh said the other day. You can transfer your funding or something like that. I forget what the process he had to go through. And he's like, yeah, you just port your funding from one NHS fund to another. I'm butchering that. I'm sure I'm so wrong. But anyway, I was
no.
I didn't know you could do that.
You can, subject to their agreement, obviously, and all the protocols being.
Isn't that a bit like turning your back on your local
pub,
though? And then the next time you need to go back down there, they're like, "Fuck you, Robbie. You didn't think we were very good last time, did you?"
One of the doctors had to go back for something different. It was about my prostate, and that's another saga for another day. But I went back and saw one of the urologists who saw me previously when I was under their care, and he literally said, "Oh, I see you've left us." Oh yeah, I have. He was fine, but you could sense it was that elephant in the room, a little bit uncomfortable. How broad shoulders. Yeah. So going to Guy's, I remember fantastic surgeries and fantastic processes. I've had probably a dozen surgeries up with them, something like that anyway. But literally the night before, they put you up in a lovely little room so you can go out and have a couple of beers. You shouldn't, and I don't advocate that, but you can pop out into a central London pub and have a couple of scoops. Yeah. Ready for the 0700 start, which is what I did on every occasion, to be fair. So you're in 0700, ready to go. They again did the blue light cystoscopy, found some more growth on a number of occasions, scooped them out, and then went to a thing called EMDR. So this is the preamble to a bladder removal, essentially.
Okay.
They went to EMDR chemotherapy. So EMDR is iontophoresis, essentially. They put some sponges on the outside of the bladder wall, just above the penis, into the pelvic area. Excuse me. Then they insert a catheter into the John Thomas, which is an electrode. Then they wind back a bit. They put the mitomycin into the bladder through a catheter. And I'll always recall the lady who did it comes in, because it's so very cytotoxic. She comes in goggles, bloody gloves down to here, proper gauntlets, a full leather, the full suite of PPE that you would expect for a full hazmat. And I'm thinking, that's going in my cock. There's no, I've got a bit of tissue wrapped around me, John Thomas, and she's now coming in with this Frankenstein kind of, which was quite phenomenal, to be honest. So I've laid down. She's come across, put the catheter in, put the fluid in, and then I'm used to it now, so it was kind of uncomfortable more than painful. And then they put this device on. Oh my God. They put this sponge thing, they put gel on, then they put the sponge onto the outside of the bladder wall, then they put the catheter in, and then they turn the machine on. So the machine creates heat, essentially. What it's doing is creating heat and iontophoresis, which makes the bladder wall bleed, which is good. It's not good, but it's good in that the bladder wall's bleeding, therefore is absorbing. Yeah, it's burning. It's a really, really odd sensation having your bladder heated from inside.
Why do you feel awake for this?
Well, it's cheaper, I suspect.
Yeah.
Less risk as well.
You dying
it's an older person's. Yeah, and it's an older person's disease, and they're, older people, as we know, are a greater risk of surgeries. So it was that. My understanding was that each catheter was £1,000, and then the jungle juice they put in was at least another £1,000, and all the pros. So it's about $3,000 a pop, just for the chemo, one day, one session.
Wow. I
had 12 of those. Yeah, so my surgeries have probably cost in the region of £500,000, I would suspect. Phenomenal. So this EMDR process.
It's so easy for us to get upset about having to go through this stuff. But equally, 10, 20 years ago, I was going to said this to Josh the other day when because he was deemed paralysed when he was took into hospital because of the way his injury happened, the way the incident happened. 10, 15, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, that was it. That was it. We ain't got an answer for you. We could put a big, horrible skeletal thing on. But, they say they have the audacity and the wonderful audacity to say to you now, you're very young for this, Mr. Burns. People used to die in their late 40s. I mean, people obviously still do, but it was old. 30, 40 years ago.
Yeah.
When you see what we're doing now, imagine what our children are probably going to, I bet most of our kids, unless they have they get addicted to something bad or whatever, they'll probably all live till they're 100. It's crazy.
Yeah, I'd agree. Yeah, octogenarians for sure. Everybody be 80 across the board. That will be the norm, won't it?
Absolutely. Man. But anyway, lucky to be able to have that sort of support. And again, it was just blind luck that we were both born in the UK. Could have been born in North Korea, for God's sake.
Absolutely. Yeah. I've travelled extensively, I'm sure you have, but in a military capacity, not to the nicest of places, I have to say. Sierra Leone, beautiful, beautiful part of the world, just ravaged. Again, if I was born there, I would have died probably anyway of something else, a comorbidity, but certainly I wouldn't have had any treatment for this. There for the grace of whoever.
I'd probably die of stupidity. I'd be shot by the local tribe for not keeping my mouth shut. But anyway, we digress.
Absolutely.
So take us to warm, bleeding bladder.
Yes. So again, I'd taken public transport. I took the National Express. I love the song.
Of course you did.
But yeah, I took the National. Yeah. So 2 hours and a bit to get me into London, and then across town into Guy's, where I'd had the jungle juice, and then the coach back, which is the norm. Bit of Karen Carpenter in my ears, listen to something quite chilled whilst I'm having this process done.
That's amazing though. Sorry, when you're traveling on a train and stuff, and you think, where are these people going? You might be sat next to someone that has a terminal illness and is going for some horrific.
Absolutely.
I'm sure I'm just a freak, but when I think about that, I'm just like, God, everyone is on a whole different. But you've got no idea what people are going through. You've got no idea.
Literally. Yeah. So people aren't going on holidays often when they're on the train or on the coach, or it's we've all got that different thing going on. Which is quite bizarre. I remember really kicking off. One of the dickheads on the bus decided he was going to have a cigarette on the back. The usual heavily tattooed, probably unemployed kind of individual. And I remember losing my shit with him and saying, what are you doing? And he's like, what's it to you? And I just opened a can of whoop-ass and said, well, actually, I'm just recovering from chemotherapy, dick. He put it out, but anyway. So this process of iontophoresis lasts half an hour, and the last 5 minutes they ramp it up to whatever voltage or whatever amps or ohms or whatever the stuff
just
is.
because you can. Let's just open it up. Let's see what this one's got in it, Robbie. Just going to open up the gas on this bad boy. You don't mind if I just take it for a ride, dear? Because they never usually let us do this. I'm just going to open up the gas.
Absolutely. Bizarre. So she was lovely, a beautiful lady called Suzanne Amory. So she's the charge nurse.
Always makes it worse when they're really beautiful, doesn't it? You're like, God, I wish I'd have met you somewhere else. Because my life's in tatters at the minute, and you're absolutely breathtakingly attractive.
Yeah, and she's touching me in my genitalia, which is not. It's got an unhappy face on it. It's got an upside down smile on, and it doesn't want to play, so it's gone back inside.
It's got an innie.
Exactly. I kept saying it's cold. It is cold in here, love.
I think it's quite warm, Mr. Burns. No, it's cold. It's really bloody cold. Coldest I've ever been.
So she's introduced the catheter, done all the bits. Again, fully cytotoxic up, fully in this magical chemical clothing. Puts it in, and you can feel it going in, and it's just And then they turn, as I said, the last 5 minutes they turn the revs up essentially, and it just becomes incredibly hot. Just whoa, what the fuck is that? Wow. So every 5 minutes she asks you the question, everything okay? And she writes in a document, 5 minutes tolerated, all the way through the process. And then that started a cycle of 12 monthly cycles of this mitomycin. So it takes a month, it takes 3 and a bit weeks to get over the first process because it just rips your bladder to bits. It does what it says on the tin. And then you go back in for another session, and then you get another, and I remember it's, for a couple of weeks after that, just going to pee, you don't want to drink almost, because you know the outcome of getting rid of that fluid is going to be proper overwhelming, and you've got to sit down because you fall over. It is that kind of, you wouldn't be able to stand up and pee, because it just you wouldn't tolerate peeing stood up. So there are lots of, and I have to say that people out there have a lot worse going on than me. So this is just my journey essentially, and I'm fully understanding that lots of people really struggle, and I'm still here. So therefore,
talk to me about those around you. We've covered a bit of a time span here, and I'm conscious that we didn't address your children at any point. And again, free
yes,
to discuss their life as their life. It's not for us to inherently discuss their life, but I think it's important to share with people, if you're able to, what that process. Because again, you said they're 5 and 7 and 17. I think you said 5 and 9.
Yeah,
sorry. Maybe.
Yeah. It's 5 and 7. 5 and 7 and 17. You're right.
What did you tell them? What did you think you needed? How did you navigate that bit?
Very difficult. Very, very difficult. Probably the hardest process. I could deal with what I had to deal with. Certainly, I just got on with it, and I've got a camera on Friday of this week. I can't wait. I'm back to London on Friday to see where we are, because I had another regrowth in January of last year, which has been taken out, and so I'm back on that roller coaster, unfortunately. However, my kids are dealing with it differently because they see it for what it is now. They understand. But in its inception, I had to ring my 17-year-old son, who was very vulnerable. He'd just recently snapped his own ACL, which then went down its own rabbit hole of 7 surgeries, and it's knackered his knee. So he was in a dark place anyway. Yeah.
I snapped my patella tendon last year, and I was in a wheelchair for a bit and doing all the rehab. So again, it's not cancer, and you can recover from it. But for someone like him, at the peak, not the peak, even just ascending the peak of his physical fitness, to get an injury like that, horrible for him, not able to do so many
absolutely.
friends, and perhaps any plans that you had for himself at that time, or even for his life. He could still probably do some of them, but like I say, a couple of surgeries after, maybe feels like he's had things stolen from him as well. Totally.
So he was on to join the Royal Marines. That was his trajectory essentially. He was playing cricket for county, so he was playing Gloucestershire cricket at the time as well. So all of that was just whipped from under him. So to compound that, it was, by the way, Sam, unfortunately I have this diagnosis and I'm unsure what the future is, and I'm unsure, I'm trying to be as strong as possible, but realistic. I believe in black and white. I don't have any of this pink and fluffy nonsense. This is what it is. This is the process. Come and have a look at this is the process. If I'm miserable, grumpy, or whatever, this is because I've had this done. And I'll put a video up, watch, this is a cystoscopy, this is what's going to happen to me next week, and it hurts. So it was very real, very visceral for him. So in isolation, the 7 and 5-year-old, it was kind of sitting down, and I'll always remember Thomas, my youngest, saying, "Daddy," and I was like, "What, mate?" He said, "Have you got cancer?" And I was like, "I have, mate." And he, again, just burst into tears, just overwhelmed by it all. But of course, that leads into having to inform friends, family of my kids, schools, the whole process of letting every teacher that comes across my kids know that actually they may be struggling at home because I'm struggling at home, and my wife may be struggling. So it's not just me, obviously it affected. It was a raft of others. Notwithstanding that, I had to try as best I could in my own dark space to try and manage, I suppose, expectation. Mm-hmm. What they thought, trying to be, I'm not going to die of this. This isn't going to kill me. And I didn't know that was the case. I was lying essentially, but trying to manage that, it's very, very difficult and overwhelming. And trying, my wife was brilliant. She picked that up and ran with that and tried to manage as best as possible. But it is, a dark place for sure.
How much you said early on in our conversation that you hadn't made any preparations for this sort of thing. Did you make any preparations? Did you do any of the...
Absolutely. Yeah. So a will was written very quickly.
What does life look like if I'm not here? What does life look like financially? What I had a lady called Helen on the podcast a few years ago, in the first year of the podcast, I travelled to come and sit with her. And I'd love for us to meet. I know we've tried a few times for this. I know we will meet each other. But she had stage 4 bone cancer. She was an RAF nurse. Stage 4 bone cancer. She had 2 sets of twins, girls.
I know Helen. She's Scottish.
Do you really? Yes.
I absolutely do. She's in my friends. Yeah, I've known her many times. Yeah, absolutely. Wow.
She did on the podcast like 3 years ago.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So I went to her home, met her partner who was also PTI in the military and
RAF.
Met the dogs, met the children. We had a very long conversation together because this was one of her next goals around leaving things for her children to remember her by. And she said, I'd love for them to have something they could listen to if the worst came to it. It was bloody horrible. It was a wonderful conversation, but the hardest conversation I think I'd probably ever had. It wasn't even me going through it. I almost feel like I've not even got the right to say that conversation was difficult for me. But anyway, it's so crazy you've met Helen. What an amazing woman. She was part of the teams that brought injured people back from war zones, and I think she brought back Mark Ormrod, who people might know was the first triple amputee.
I know Mark.
Mate.
Mark, legend. Former Royal Marine, Mark. I speak to him.
There you go. It's a small world. You wouldn't want to paint it, though, would you? Anyway, Helen.
No. Wow.
Helen's amazing. Bizarre. Wow, incredible woman. But that just made me think for a second, only because she was writing letters for her girls when they were 18 for their wedding day and a few other things. How much of that were you like, I don't want to do this because I'm hoping it's going to be all right, but what if it's not all right? And I don't want to do it in a rush. And I don't even know if I have the mental capacity to do it if I get to a place where I'm in so much pain I can't do that.
Yeah. So I did all of the grown-up stuff, I suppose. I didn't write notes to my kids. I probably should have maybe, but I didn't. Luckily, I didn't need to, as it transpires. But I did all the grown-up stuff. I had a will done very soon. I sorted out because I do the finance. I have the bank accounts details and all the bills and all the dross. And my wife cracks on and goes to work. So she was blissfully unaware of what was going on. There's no drama, but blissfully unaware of the intricacies of changing your gas supplier and all the other nonsense. So I recall sharing all of the info. This is our insurance. This is our house insurance. This is our home insurance. This is our car insurance. All of the relevant stuff, just in case I'm not here. And she's like, "Oh, don't be so ridiculous." The usual. Don't be so bloody. But it's very real. You have to show where X is, where Y is, how you turn the gas off, how you turn the water off. This is how I do this. Come and see how I fix the boiler, how I reset this, or whatever it looks like. I showed her how to take the battery out of a key yesterday, just because. You never know.
Yeah. Do you know
process,
where the water stopcock is for the house? If suddenly the water starts pissing out upstairs, do you know how to switch it off? This is the thing I did with my wife the other day, because it's just a thing you'd never think to talk about. And most people, most kids, when you go to a flooding in a high rise or something like that, most kids haven't got a clue. They just don't know this stuff. No one's teaching them anymore. And then those people become adults, and it's just random stuff. But we do. We have the blue jobs and the pink jobs, or the his and hers, or the whatever. Everyone has a thing that the other person probably doesn't know anything about.
Exactly. So I'm still in the process of doing that. So straight away, I wrote to the pensions department when I was diagnosed and said, what would be worst case scenario payout, and how do I access that, and who accesses that? And then I got onto the Fire Brigades Union again with the similar sort of process of who would need to be contacted in the event of, and it's very grown up. It's a very real conversation to have with somebody, an unexpected one at that age too, but the right one. So everything is in place. I've got a file upstairs with everything and everywhere to go really, and that's been there for a little while. So it's funny old world we live in.
Mm-hmm. So take us beyond that. Take us to where we are now. Where you find me today, because we actually first got our conversation going through Simon. I think it was Simon, wasn't it? Simon Hunter.
Yes, it was Simon Hunter.
How did? Yeah. So start connecting some dots for me between what you've been doing now, because you've travelled across around the UK. You've been speaking with a lot of services. You do a lot of awareness around firefighter cancer as well. What's happening with your diagnosis now? How did this manifest into a desire to help other people? Talk about the scars that it's left you with mentally, physically, all that sort of stuff.
Right. So about 2 years ago, I was working at Gosport Fire Station as a crew manager on the run, having surveillance essentially. And I was approached by my service, Hampshire Fire, or Hampshire and the Isle of Wight Fire, because I'd done some stuff for the Fire Brigades Union and the Daily Mail and Daily Mirror and the BBC, which again, as you've said, as an advocate really of checking your balls, mental health, physical health, firefighting cancers essentially, which I'll lead on to in a moment. But we now know that we are 4 times more likely to get a disease in our working life, up to 5.6 times. In fact, if you're at a job for more than 4 hours, for instance, that increases to 5.6 times likelihood. So we know that. The World Health Organization knows that. The world knows that generally. Australasia, America, most states of Poland, everywhere other than UK, it would seem, have legislation for firefighter cancer. We have mesothelioma, is the only recognised disease in the UK at the moment. Unacceptable, and is changing. So I was asked, and I've spoken of that in Fire Brigade Union at a conference in Brighton, etc. So
where would we find the documentation for that 4 hours 5.6? Is that, do you have that study?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's the UCLan, University of Central Lancashire study, and it was done by Professor Anna Steck et al. And others.
Yeah.
So UCLan study, and it's firefighter cancers basically. It was an FBU funded study.
It's the FBU one.
Pages, but it's,
right. Okay. Yeah, I've got that one. I've got that one in front of me now. I wasn't sure which presentation that's because I've been sent a lot of stuff from John Lord as well.
Yes, lovely.
John sent me so much stuff. John's a wonderful bloke.
Yeah,
we go for this. Yeah, so the FBU
really is.
contaminants. I've got the interim best practice guide, which we will share for that for people. But sorry, carry on. Just so people know, because some of this will be brand new figures to some people. The 4 hour aspect,
of course,
certainly from a welfare perspective, is applied quite flexibly because of different justifications. But I don't think people overlayer this factor onto it. So it's important to do so. But
no. We need to be on board. We need to be on top of this from the top to our own decisions too. So we're lazy as firefighters generally. I'm a firefighter and I'm lazy as much as possible. Mm-hmm. We're dynamically brilliant. On a fire ground, 150, 200% will be active out there. Fantastic. Back on a fire station, 3 a.m, car fire, they're not going to shower. They're going to get back in the bed because that's the nature of the beast. That's what we do. We need to stop doing that. So 2 years ago, I was asked by the service if I wanted to come and represent the service on this growing topic of contaminants and firefighters, which initially I refused actually because of our high-rise process. I won't go down that politics rabbit hole. But anyway, in the January of 2 years ago, I felt that it was bigger than my personal agenda. This had to be something that had to be shouted from the rooftops. So I accepted the role. And for now, 2 years, I've been advocating the best practice as much as possible, lots of research, and I've cost the service a fortune, I think. But basically, as you said, I try and speak to people, shock people, is what we need. We need that physical. This is actually what I did because I didn't take the precautions because, to be fair, there weren't any precautions in place when I joined. And again, it's no real fault, although dissertations were written in 2018 by individuals in my service for master's degrees on firefighters' contaminants and the risks of that, and no action was taken until 2 years ago. So we've known corporately about this risk. Sweden have been doing stuff for 15 years. People have been doing stuff.
Sweden and America seem to be a lot further ahead than we are
absolutely
with this stuff. And again, America certainly is obviously bigger and more funding. But like you say, once you have that information, you're now falling into, negligence because you've been made aware of this, and you're almost actively choosing not to do this. And I know you joke there and say, I've cost my service a fortune. Well, it's already been costing individuals far more than that. It's just a hidden cost.
Absolutely.
It's a personal cost.
Absolutely.
Dealt with in the confines
Yeah.
of their family and their world.
Yeah, absolutely that. So going back to cost, mine was probably 2 years of sickness on and off in the last 12, which is cost of service, my own cost as well as probably 100k, and then the NHS cost is probably 500. So 600k of the public purse has been spent on me as an individual. So going back to what needs to be done, I now speak to services. I'm speaking in Manchester in March. I'm speaking in London this end of this month, actually. As many forums as I can get on, really, to advocate that we need to do things individually. We need to do things better. We need to wear nitrile gloves when we touch anything on a fire appliance because it's never being cleaned. Everything on a truck is dirty. It's all been to a thatch. It's all been to a minging, filthy job. We need to treat it like it's covered in feces because this is worse than feces for you. You wouldn't touch it with no gloves if it was shite all over it. So we need to change our thought process. We need to do this as a cultural change, individually, corporately too. I'm lucky. I've got the ear of the chief, the DEP, the assistant chief, and they do listen and they are acting really positively, as well as my boss. I'll give him a shout. Etienne, he's fantastic. He's really advocating this too. Apparently I'm a nightmare to manage, but hey ho.
Look at that, my world.
They're listening. Well, yeah.
I'm probably not as costly as you, but yeah, I just need to do what I'm told more often, I think. But maybe
sometimes though, no, absolutely not. No.
This thing that we're talking on right now would have never been created if I'd have just fallen in line and kept doing the thing. And then stories like yours, I feel, never would have been told. And equally, the fact that you've had to wrestle, bend, and manipulate. Sometimes because some people didn't want to. Sometimes it didn't fit their political narrative. Sometimes because it just wasn't affordable. Whatever. But you we've had conversations before this. The work you've had to put in. And also the easiest thing for you to have done would just be like, look, I've just got to need to focus on myself right now. Look, I'm sorry. I know I should be doing all this extra stuff, but it's broken me. I'm not trying to blow smoke up your ass, but you're choosing to do it when
so
it's taken so much from you already.
It has, but it's also cathartic, I think. I like tattoos as well, so I've had a fair few of those done as part of my journey because they're linked. It's a process of pain that I was controlling, essentially. The stuff up here is, I'm sure it's most uncomfortable, and I choose to do that. So I've put myself in this arena because I feel it's of greater benefit to others. People can listen or people can ignore, but ultimately we are dying young of a cancer that is preventable, certainly manageable. So my diagnosis was, as I said earlier at the beginning of the piece, I ignored it because I was 40, because I was fit, and ultimately I had a raging disease inside of me that needed to be excised. And because I was complacent, lack of knowledge, I suppose, as well, I ignored it. And it's now, the reason I ignored it has led me to another diagnosis, as I said, a year ago, where I'm going back to London on Friday to see if it's any further progression, etc. So I could have swerved that. The service could have swerved that nationally. They could have put things in place at an earlier time. That it's moving now at a rate of knots. I know that the contaminants piece is going to change the whole landscape of the fire. So in 5 years' time, it will be a different job.
Yeah, it's going to change the whole job, isn't it? And it needs to as well. It's going to be annoying and awkward to some people. It's just because it's a long-term saving. In the documents and stuff like that, they talk about chronic exposures and that aspect of it, because it's not like, I always say to people, don't wear your harness, you fall off the roof. That is an immediate cost, massive cost, immediate ramification, closed loop. Don't do the thing, you get hurt right now. This is the stuff that creeps up on us over decades, and then you pay the big irreversible cost then.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're absolutely right, and that's an analogy I kind of use. You've got a safety officer if the chimney breast is loose at a job. You will have people all around there. You'll have cordon tape. You'll have all sorts of things in place for that acute activity. The chronic exposure thing, and I think mine was an acute exposure anyway, but the chronic over time exposure of various chemicals, of which there are about 300 produced in effluent, toxic effluent. Each one in isolation will try and kill you. So, we know about this. We choose individually to perhaps ignore that. Things like touching a BA set without nitrile gloves, and then going for a pee without washing your hands. Nobody washes their hands before they pee, do they?
No.
We have a massive testicular cancer problem within the fire sector because of that. Little things. We touch our genitals because it's what we've always done without gloves. We need to stop doing that. PPE is available. We need to wear PPE. We don't. More often than not, showers are available in most cases. We don't shower because we choose not to. We'll come back from a fire straight into the gym because we're already dirty. But we're opening up our pores. We've got a stinking, filthy, minging, BA-worn T-shirt underneath. We're going to go into the gym, open our pores, still wear that BA shirt that's gassing off into our pores.
Yeah, it's from equipment to PPE to uniform to station layouts to, it's really going to be just a massive redesign of the whole entire environment, isn't it? But there has to be political appetite for it because this is incredibly costly stuff. And we don't want it to come at the cost of just having to chop half of the personnel.
Yeah, absolutely. There has to be funding. Home office funding is the next step. I think legislation isn't far away. I hope this is the new asbestosis. This is absolutely the new asbestosis. So we know about that. We are aware of the risks, and we put all of those control measures in place. We need to do the same. We're going into buildings still without. I don't know if you have PPV, positive pressure ventilation, where you are. We have it here. We don't use it very well.
No, we don't use it because we've not trained properly on it. So I'm a TAC vent instructor, but we only use phase 1 in the service that I belong to. But post fire. And I would love for us to bring in for a variety of reasons. Phase 3 is such a fantastic, but it requires a much more aggressive version of firefighting, an expedient searching process through the building and all this sort of stuff. And it relies on a higher level of reading the smoke, reading the fire than I think we train a lot of our commanders to do. Hence why we're scared to death of using phase 3, just pushing fire into the roof voids and spreading through the buildings and all this sort of stuff. But I digress. It is something that's on the vehicles and is sparsely used, I think, in a lot of services, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. So we use all the way through, 1, 2, and 3, and it's a brilliant use, brilliant bit of kit. We have an ultra high pressure lance as well, so we can penetrate without going into the buildings. Ultimately, we shouldn't be going into a fire. I hate the phrase, but the Yanks use "hit it hard from the yard." Let's put a window in, let's squirt water from the outside, therefore not being contaminated in any way. The level 3 for us, we'll put the fan on, ensure there's an exit route. It takes more personnel to do, a little bit more, and as you said, a little bit more knowledge. But knowledge is power. You clear that smoke, clear that neutral plane above your head, you will not be contaminated anymore, simply. It's as simple and as black and white as that. Back with the fans, you have a fan. I imagine your service don't use it on car fires.
No,
lots of service don't. I don't understand why. So we still have a BA team disappear into smoke of a car fire, don't we? Commonly. And then we put water on it. You can tell it's being jobbed because it's turning white.
Yeah.
And we're still in that smoke plume. We're still absolutely in that smoke plume in BA. If we have a fan, the car's written off. We know the car's lost. If safe to do so, put the fan on. We control that smoke direction. We come in from the fan end, squirt water on the car. It's so simple, but it's just overlooked.
I think about that with rubbish fires as well, like just banging an open end into a skip fire where sometimes people weren't even, and I didn't when I joined, you just hold, you didn't even put a branch on the damn thing. It would be funny because they'd watch me hold it over the top of the skip and then switch it on and it goes everywhere. Yeah. But I wasn't wearing BA for it. This is before I even done my BA course. I was just a fresh, firefighter probationer. Keen. Yeah, keen as mustard. And I'd climb in the damn thing, walking around it, holding this open-ended thing over my shoulder. But like you say, stuff like that, it's just a case of, do I need to be? And one of the hazmat officers we had on a little while ago was really interesting because they said, and they gave a great, wonderful breakdown, and I'll butcher it now, but, like when we go to one of these BA incidents, when you break it down as to what it is, it's a black box with lots of unknown chemicals inside it, and they can spread and they can contact. Well, that's a hazmat job, isn't it? So would you go in there and roll around in it and put your fingers all over it? I mean, hazmat would, we're not very good at it, I don't think, nationally anyway. It's
no.
all a bit weird.
Yeah,
and that's with respect, because our hazmat officers, I'm sure, and our NILOs and everyone else is very well trained. But largely, from a firefighter's perspective, we're a little bit cack at it and we don't fully understand it. But we don't think of fires in the same capacity.
No, it's just a job.
It is a great asbestos analogy, isn't it? Because asbestos in itself is fine if undisturbed. Well, that plastic table over there is absolutely fine until I set fire to it. And that car, and it starts pissing this millions and millions of different toxins all over the place. Through my skin, in my eyes, in my lungs, everywhere. This enormous cocktail. And I'm not even thinking about it.
Because it's what we do for a living. We will still risk our lives a lot cheesily to save your life. We will do that. We will still go into burning buildings. We will still save little Johnny from the front. And that's exactly what we do. And that's right. We will still die of cancer in this job because of what we do. But we shouldn't be dying at 4 times the national average. No. If we could get that to below 2, or something, or norm, we should. Eric PD, eliminate, reduce, isolate, contain. We should absolutely eliminate that. We shouldn't be going into a building 2BA, 1 hose rule, left-hand search, even if there's nobody in there. Why are we doing that? Ultimately, why are we doing that? We can see the fire often through the kitchen window. Let's smash the kitchen window, put the fire out. Let's not go in until we have to. It's just so many things.
And I agree with you. And I'm staying quiet there because part of me is like, and it's so bad. I still love it. And I'm a moron. I know I'm a moron. And it's just... it's so hard, and it's hard for me from a CFBT and a BAI perspective because I'm like, we've got to give them exposure to real fire.
Yeah, we do.
And we do. I know, and there's so many sides to this coin. And Lars Axelsson, we had him on recently, and he wears a full particulate suit because he does this very regularly. He wears that underneath his fire kit and all this sort of stuff. And I wonder if we're just poorly disciplined in the UK in terms of our personal disciplines, because it doesn't even seem to blink for him. He's like, well, no, I just do it properly. I wear 2 sets of gloves. I wear my pathogen suit. I don't ever eat around it. I always wash. And it's when you do that, I get it. Like you say, you are massively reducing the risk. Really, I think a lot of the low-hanging fruit, well, this is not to say that procedurally we don't need to change, environmentally we don't need to change our buildings and everything like that. So much of it is behaviour, though. It's exactly what you said. Our BA shop, there's got a shower and toilet next door. All right, just done this right, fire kit, everyone, let's go. Oh, actually, I'm just going to have a quick wee. After I've just done my set, I'm going to pop through there, fondle with myself, and then come back out.
Yeah, it's just simple as that.
Don't even think about it.
So going even further than that, we advocate in the service, in my service, that everybody wears nitrile gloves, and it's brilliant, and they are mostly. If you're touching anything you even suspect might be dirty, you should wear gloves, simply, and then ditch those gloves. That's including your BA checks at 9 o'clock in the morning, 1800, handover stuff, all of that. Anything you do, any standard tests, all those. We had somebody recently at a wildfire, fantastic, had nitrile gloves on, looked at the business, was eating a sandwich with a nitrile glove on. It's just... Oh my God, really, really? So, we need to do much more individually and as a team and as a group of people. You need to stand around and say, actually, Nobber, put your fucking gloves on. Don't be a dick. I'm going to get a T-shirt, actually, that says, don't be a dick on it. And I'm going to give it to people because we need to not be dicks.
Mate, I lost my shit a little bit with somebody on a fire behaviour day recently. We'd given all the talk about it. So we let them eat early in the morning because we say, we're going to go about 5 hours now. We're going to skip lunch so we could just do the wear, do the decontamination, the shower, decontaminate all the kit, bag all your kit up, and then get you away, and then you can eat on the way back home or whatever.
Yeah.
And then whilst this person's waiting for their wear, they're sneaking in between the vans and eating. And I went, so I was like, where's the third team? Because they're up next, they need to get to the board and blah blah blah. And I go and I find them there, and they're eating, and they're and I just completely lost my shit at them. And then I wonder what we need to do about that. I don't know. Is that a disciplinary conversation? Yeah. Because if you perpetually don't wear your helmet on the incident ground, they're probably going to discipline you eventually.
Yeah.
Few quiet tells, then a sit down tell in the watch room, and a note for file. and then right, we've discussed this 3 times now. I'm gonna give you this is a verbal warning. Okay?
Yeah.
This is your verbal warning. If you're seen in a cordon at an incident without correct PPE on again, this will be this.
I'm gonna run you. Yeah.
And that's not what we want, but it's a bit like a child, isn't it? I said, don't touch the sharp knives.
Yeah.
Don't touch the sharp knives. Right, I've just watched you run across the kitchen with that sharp knife in your hand. Go to your room or whatever.
Yeah. No, it is. We need to. We absolutely need to go back a little. We need to step.
Because when you fall on that and stab yourself in the face, I'm going to deal with the problem.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And that's as a service, and again, my service has been fantastic, but there's a limit. If you're not helping yourself, we've now really luckily managed to get particulate flush-hoods at great expense. They're 100 quid each or whatever. We've got 3,000 of those. And we were told initially, you're not having that. I was told that. And then I took umbrage and managed to fight, write business cases and all of that. We've now got them, but that's on the back of you must shower after a BA wear. So in a CFBT environment, part of the pass or fail is that you shower. And we've mandated that. So if you don't shower, you don't pass. And that's... People go, well, you can't do that.
What a great shout. I'm going to steal that.
Yeah.
Great idea.
Make people shower. They've got to shower because they'll sit in the back of a truck, go back to their home station maybe an hour where I live. The traffic's hideous on the M27, M3. They'll sit in a truck for an hour, gassing off amongst each other, eating, bloody doing whatever else, scratching, all of this stuff, and they're gassing off. So we've now contaminated the vehicle as well as each individual person. So it's a mandated. But because of that, we've managed to spend a few quid on PPE on the back of actually changing the way we do stuff.
Yeah. We bought everybody towels as well because that was one of the things where they were like, make sure you bring a towel, and then you get the odd dick, don't you? It's just like, oh, well, I'm supposed to bring my own towel. I'll tell you what, we'll give everyone a towel. Everyone gets a towel with your name on it. It's embroidered on it, so no one steals it. Yeah.
Right.
And then,
brilliant.
As soon as you get there in the morning, have the soap provided in the shower. Has everyone got a towel? Good. If you haven't got a towel, you can't because you can't. Don't come into the briefing.
You're not playing.
You're not going to be taking part today. And then their manager sends an email, and it's like, oh, I gave this person the day off to come to the training, but they didn't bring a fucking towel.
Yeah, exactly. It's in the joining instructions.
Without their fire kit, I'm sure you'd be annoyed at them. Right, they've turned it without a towel, so they can't participate.
It's PPE. It's as simple as that. It forms part of your daily activity.
And that's the mindset shift we're looking for, isn't it? That's what we need to be looking at.
Yeah.
So
we
important.
We need to treat this seriously. It is. The World Health Organization in May last year, the WHO, said, as I'm sure you know, firefighting is now classed the same as smoking in that firefighting is carcinogenic to humans.
Year before last. It's 2022 now.
Year before last, it was. Christ, yeah.
I know, here we are in January.
May before. Wow, I blinked and missed it. So we know it to be as risky as smoking, but we still smoke. Oh yeah, I'll give up. No. You don't understand. You need to change. It's killing you. This is killing us. We're dying. I've been to too many funerals. I've been to too many fucking chemo sessions to know that this is not good for us.
Do you know what I see this as, though? There's a great book called Switch. I don't know if you've ever read it, and it talks about the elephant and the rider. Have you ever heard of this analogy?
No.
So the rider is your logical brain. Robbie, it's killing you. Stop smoking. Yeah, I know. I've seen the report. I can throw the report at you and the statistics, and 27 firefighters died, and here's all the chemotherapy. That's the rider. The elephant is the emotion. The elephant, and that's what this conversation is. The elephant for me, one of many elephants, because unless you want to do it because you've been emotively affected by a story, because we learn through stories, don't we? If I tell you 27 million children are dying because of thirst in Uganda, you're like, I can't comprehend that, but it's just 27 million kids, I don't know. But if I show you a picture of Tempe, who's 3 years old and she's carrying 27 kilos, we learn through stories. It's how the Bible was written. And it needs to be a sell, not a tell. Do you know what I mean? We need to sell this idea to people because it is in your best interest, not mine. It's a seatbelt. That's what it is. I can't make you a seatbelt. I might catch you and then send you a photo of yourself and hit you with a big stick and give you a fine. But you have to take the elephant and the rider. I feel like logically, the WHO and everything like that has given us all that information. The rider is well informed, but in the moment where it's like, I just need the wee, or I'm really actually hungry, Robbie, or I do genuinely just need to get home to the kids, that's where you won't be able to pull the elephant, because the elephant will go, oh, it's just fucking convenient to do this.
Yeah,
So, elephant
and it doesn't
and
hurt.
variety, you've got to take them both with you.
Well, that's the thing, and it doesn't hurt, and because until it hurts, it doesn't hurt. So until you have that diagnosis, you haven't had a diagnosis, so you're fine, you're bulletproof.
You wear the oven
you're not.
gloves because it's really hot.
Yeah,
And you only have to. Your child only has to touch the kettle once to go, oh, that's really sucked. I'm not going to do that again. I'm going to hold it by the handle, or I'm going to get the tea towel. But like you say, there's this immediate aspect of it, and I want to thank you so much for giving us all the layers and all of the colour to your personal experience. And I know you're going to be travelling around and continuing to share this message. I want to be respectful of your time, but is there any bits you feel we haven't covered? Any pertinent pieces of information? I'd love to have you on again in the future, to be really honest with you. But
I'd love to.
Where would we want to signpost people to after this? Where perhaps might they be able to see you? I know you referenced you are speaking at different places.
Yeah, so I'm at Biggin Hill Airport in February, but I'm up to the conference with John Lord and speaking at the conference at the Lowry Hotel in Manchester.
I'll be with you at Biggin Hill. I was supposed to be there with John, but I'm now going out to Saudi Arabia. I haven't told John yet, though, but by this time, he'll probably know.
Okay.
It's really just, it's harsh, but you just can't be everywhere, can you? But I am going to Biggin Hill with the Hunter team, and I think that one will be a great one as well, because I think there's 2 individuals from pretty much every fire service across the UK is going to be there. And some powerful speakers such as yourself. So it's a big event.
What I'd like to get on the back of that is we have a thing called a SNOMED code, which I'm sure you've heard of. I'm hoping.
Yep.
Yeah.
For people that haven't, please give us some layers about that.
Yeah. So a SNOMED code, I won't break down the actual the letters of it, but it's basically a system where we can record with our medical professionals, whether that's primary or secondary healthcare, so your GP or your ongoing surgery if you have that, a set of numbers. One is a firefighter and the other one is exposure to hazardous toxicants. So those 2 different numbers can be furnished to your GP. When you go and see them, it will flag that basically you are a firefighter and also you're exposed to an industrial level of nasty at work. So they would then base their opinion. So when I was diagnosed aged 34, I would suspect I would have had more scans, more investigation, etc., based on my SNOMED code than I did have, because it wasn't a thing. I implore people to get their SNOMED codes, one to say they're a firefighter and the other to say they have toxic exposure, and give those to their GPs, because it will change your diagnosis. The GP will act upon the information in front of them. If they know you're a firefighter, you can tell them as much as you want, but if they know that when they make their decisions in 20 minutes after your appointment on what the future is for you, they would order a scan as opposed to not. Belt and braces. So SNOMED code is critical. You must inform your GP of that. Finally, from me, yesterday was a really good step forward. The Home Office have asked for a literature review of all things contaminants. So they're paying 40k, or they've bid 40k for somebody or a company to come and read all of the current landscape of literature to make a better and a more informed decision. So I think the next step will be legislation on this, based on what came out yesterday, won't it?
And that'll be the bit, like you say, where it doesn't rely on people emotionally being invested in it, although we want people to do it because it's the right thing to do. It'll be mandated. And that needs to be what it is, because that avoids any complaints around funding or we're a small service, we're a small brigade, and then it becomes elitist, and it's the rich get richer, the poor get poorer. Small services have more firefighter contamination and higher, the higher likelihood of firefighter cancer, because they simply don't have the luxury of size. But if it's mandated, like everything else, then it creates an even playing field and an expectation, and protects you, me, protects the employer at the end of the day.
Yeah, exactly. And our children, we are now, I promise an early finish, we are the chemicals that are in fires are changing our DNA. They are bolting onto our DNA as we speak, changing our profile. So not only does that affect our mental health, we are now creating a genetic flaw that we will pass on to our children. So my father had prostate cancer and unfortunately died of that. I am 7 times more likely to succumb to that myself because of that genetic flaw. We are, if you've never had cancer in your family, as a firefighter, there's a potential that the chemicals involved in fire will change your DNA profile to therefore you will pass on that flawed cancer gene to your children. That's how significant this is. It's incredible, honestly. Wow. The science is incredible. It's scary.
So I'm just going to pull that link, actually. So for people that want to go and find out about SNOMED, I know we briefly mentioned it there. I'm going to put a link for people to go and understand it, because it's Sierra November Oscar Mike Echo Delta. It's not snow as in the snow you see outside. I'll put a link in there for people to go over to NHS England and find out what that is. And then we will also put a link in for Anastek's report, so that people can go and look at that one. That's the FBU. How do they entitle it? This is the Minimising the Firefighter Exposure to Toxic Fire Effluents. This is the UCLAN, an independent report by UCLAN with a forward by the FBU General Secretary Matt Rack. We will put that link in there as well, all freely available documents. This is not government secrets, folks. Please go in and have a look at them. Thanks so much for your time, brother. Really enjoyed getting to chat with you. Thank you for still being with us. Thank you for sharing what you know better than anyone to be a finite period of time that we have available to us. And I always wonder, like, if you had a clock above your head, and when you're going through something, the time on it dramatically drops, and then you take some correct actions. Wouldn't that be a thing? Like every time you choose not to, like, to go back to our conversation, you choose not to put the gloves on. Every time you choose not to carry out your clock drops by a few hours or a day or a year. Do you know what I mean? Every time you make the right decision, it extends. Because he's probably doing that anyway. And I might get hit by a bus tomorrow. But avoidant of those things within our sphere of control, that's kind of what we're doing. You know? So hopefully, maybe even people listen to something like this, and because they have the awareness, and perhaps hopefully it will change some of the decisions they make and the behaviours they walk into the fire station with tomorrow. They might make a few different decisions, and they might get a little bit more time.
I hope so, Pete. Don't be me, basically. Don't be me.
Mate, thank you so much, Suzanne. Really appreciate it. Please send my love to the family and the dogs and everyone else, and I will see you soon.
Cool. Thank you, Pete.
The Firefighters podcast was created to recognize, acknowledge, inspire, and hopefully even motivate these incredible individuals who have chosen to be part of the first responder community. Our driving purpose is to create a legacy resource for the current and future generations of firefighters and first responders. We get some incredible feedback from listeners and guests, and as the podcast grows, our desire to create longevity and sustainability means that we are asking for the support of our listeners. If you want to support the podcast, if you want to get discounts to our merchandise, hoodies, clothing, coins, patches, tallies, and also access to all of the incredible documents get shared with us from our podcast guests and sector leaders, then please head over to our Patreon page, and for just £3 a month, you can support the future of the podcast. Please finally hit that follow, subscribe, or rate button on the platform you're listening, and wherever you are in the world, please support your emergency services responders, and thank you for listening.